All right, moving on to Duke. I had forgotten the banner for North Carolina, but we'll throw it up for Duke. So Duke last year, 4 seed in the tournament before losing to NC State in the Elite Eight, which I'm sure left a pretty nasty taste in a lot of Blue Devil fans' mouths. As with any Duke team, you always are going to have guys who leave for the pros. So Jared McCain, Kyle Filipowski, both moved on to the NBA. Even besides those guys, there's a decent amount of turnover. So Jeremy Roach transferred to Baylor. A big loss that I think like a lot of people don't realize like how big of a loss that was. Ryan Young, Northwestern legend, no longer there. And Mark Mitchell transferred out as well. And this is Cooper Flagg's team. It's crazy that we're 13 minutes into the ACC preview podcast, and this is the first that we're mentioning his name. But it's going to be the Cooper Flagg show. He's 5-star, number 1 recruit in the class. He's going to be an elite defensive playmaker. And kind of what I think Duke will be looking for is how much the other aspects of his game round out. Like, is he going to be able to stretch the floor? He's such an elite athlete and such a good playmaker on not just the defensive end, but also offensively as well, that he will definitely have a major impact for this team. And is one of these freshmen that coming in, you're like, he could maybe win National Player of the Year. Like, as crazy as that sounds. But it's been a while since we've had one of those freshmen. I mean, going back to like the Zion days, it's been a while since we've had a freshman where they're this highly touted. So I'm done. I'm done talking about Duke. I'm gonna let Alex talk about Duke because that's his wheelhouse.
Yeah, I mean, besides the fact that he's 17 years old, and not to do the whole like Alabama Ryan Williams thing, because I think that's going to be beaten to death before Flagg turns 18 in late December. But I do work, like I don't really know, because I mean I was only, what was I, 9 or 10 when the Anthony Davis season was, but I don't know how much. I don't think Flagg's counting stats will be maybe to the same level as someone like RJ Davis or Mark Sears or Janai Broome, especially in the scoring department. So I wonder if that would impact the National Player of the Year candidacy. But from all the film anyone's ever seen, like that argument's to be made. And then I think just in terms of the way Scheyer constructed this roster, it's really interesting because everyone on this roster taller than 6'5". He clearly wants to just have kind of not only switchability and versatility, which have been pillars of his defensive systems early in his career, but also just, I think he just wanted that positional size. And maybe that was because he saw last year playing an undersized backcourt and he was privy to what the lack of a rim protector does. Because I know you were ahead of that last year. You were talking about how big of a concern that was. And I think I approached it more from an optimist perspective. And I was like, it could be a protection by committee approach. And that's kind of the case this year. But you have Kaman Malwatch, you have Cooper Flagg, you have Malik Brown, all kind of patrolling now. And that's wasn't the case last year. So I think there is something to be said that Scheyer picked up on kind of the failings last year and has done his best to try to correct that. It's just whether the product on the court meets it. I honestly think a lot of the season hinges on whether Tyrese Proctor can get to the rim and finish, because if he can't get downhill, I really worry. And I don't think Proctor's place in this lineup is going to be stripped from him. Like, I don't think you're sending one of your captains to the bench. So I'm curious. There's so much talent on this team, and it feels like every offseason, especially under Scheyer, he's been like, we're gonna run, we're gonna play faster, and then he has, in his 2 years, has produced like sub 250 tempo teams in Ken Pom. It's like, really, like, you can't. You have all this talent across the floor.
Yeah.
But no, I'm interested. I think it's hard to poke a ton of holes besides the obvious youth within the roster, because I think you have the shooting with Con Knipple or Darren Harris or Mason.
There it is. I was wondering when you were going to bring up Con. I know you're a big Con guy.
No, I'm a big Con guy. I got to see that guy in person in Wisconsin a couple times, and man, he was. I mean, I wasn't expecting this lottery type buzz, but he again, just the lack of exposure when you're playing for a high school in Wisconsin versus I'm sure he had opportunities to transfer to one of the bigger prep powerhouses. But yeah, no, it's interesting. He just is the adjectives of like fundamental and savvy and crafty, all to describe him as a scorer, are going to be way overused. But it just that does kind of embody what his game is. Like he's got this big frame. He just kind of gets to his spots. He uses a bunch of pump fakes to get around. He's a lights out shooter. Yeah, this roster is really good. Like I just think it is. It's just whether Scheyer can kind of keep it at an insane level. Whether I know there were some reported locker room issues last year. You never know if that rears its head again. But yeah, I'm fascinated by how this kind of unfolds because I do think that there is a lot of pressure on Scheyer to make a Final Four, especially at Duke, no less, but just in kind of general that, you know, they landed the boozers a couple of days ago and that graphic started to float of it was now 12 5-stars he's landed. And I think there's a question to be asked if there's a different coach on the sidelines for Duke, like what does that, not that I think Duke fans would want a different coach, but I think it's, people can kind of make the argument that if you replaced him with, you know, what if you gave Steve Forbes that talent, or what if you gave insert another ACC coach? So anyway, this Duke roster is really good, and
for all the freshmen, it's I wanted to pull up the stat because I had this bookmarked for a while, but this is courtesy of Andrew Weatherman. So the Blue Devils 2024-25 roster sets program records for cumulative collegiate minutes played, games started, total rebounds, and three-point field goals made across the three-point era. So we talk about all the cool toys that Scheyer has with all these, you know, highly touted freshmen, but then you talk about the Big Ten Sixth Man of the Year in Mason Gillis from Purdue, who's just been a great glue guy like throughout his collegiate career. You have Sion James from Tulane, who I've been a big Tulane guy the last couple of years. Like the Green Wave have never kind of reached the expectations that I had for them. They haven't made the tournament, but they had some dudes down there. They had some dudes down there in Tulane. Plus you had just an elite defensive player in Malik Brown from Syracuse. And just taking everything in sum, like, yeah, it's year 3 for Tyrese Proctor. A lot of people were projecting that last year would be the big Tyrese Proctor breakout, but maybe that's actually this year. Like maybe everybody was a year early on that. You have Caleb Foster back for another year. So it's his sophomore campaign. When you take like the experience and just the elite talent level, the Duke Blue Devils have legit national title upside. Like I don't think that that's a hot take or anything. The big question I have is just, is there enough? There's so much like talent and so much versatility, but my big question is there enough playmaking on the offensive end? Because Proctor never quite like reached those heights last year. Roach was like good for it somewhat, but he's not really like a true one. Obviously, like the standard's really high. Like you said, it's Duke. Scheyer's been there for 2 years now, and it's funny because you brought up the Boozer twins committing to Duke, and of course the knock whenever Scheyer gets one of these, you know, top 20 recruits is like, well, he hasn't won a title yet. It's like, what do you mean he hasn't won a title yet? He's been there for 2 years, but that's like, that just speaks more, I think, to the level of talent, if anything. Like it's crazy what they have down there. So,
I mean,
what would you consider a success for this team? I guess is my question.
Duke historically in my lifetime has never put much stock in the regular season title. Ironically, it feels like it's always been getting hot in the ACC tournament. But I think I with this roster, I think, and how deep they can go, I think it's probably an ACC regular season title. Probably like 25-6 in the regular season, or better. Not going out in the quarters of the ACC tournament again. And then I don't know. I think Elite Eight again would be a success. I don't think people would view it as that, but I would push back if someone said that it wasn't a successful year if you win one of the 2 ACC titles and make an Elite Eight, because at that point even when you get to the Sweet 16, it's such a crapshoot that it's like the ball can bounce, especially those new evolution balls. Like those balls can bounce anywhere. So yeah, no, it's fascinating. Scheyer's finished. I think he was projected. Oh gosh, I should have written these numbers down. He was projected to finish like 18th in his first year, maybe, and I think he finished 16th or vice versa. And then it was projected 7th and finished 9th in year 2. Like he's finishing about where one would expect them to. It's just it's you have all this young talent that you're bringing in, and people are expecting 2012 Kentucky or 2015 Duke, and you can't. I don't know. I would push back that you can't replicate that every year. But then it becomes an argument about, isn't that how you should construct your roster? So
sure. Yeah. And I think the roster construction this year actually will be a big
good.
help in that regard. Just with there's depth, there's so much experience on this team. So Scheyer has the flexibility to kind of mix and match and like figure out what the best combination of guys is.
And I think Tyrese Proctor will be better this year because he really came along that kind of third part of his freshman year when he kind of developed that connection with Lively as a lob threat. And I think he has that again, both in Flagg, but also more specifically in Malwatch. And I just think I think there's enough playmaking by committee that it could work. I wonder who the last shot goes to if they need it. I actually think it would go Caleb Foster, but
sure.
Yeah. No, I think Caleb Foster is going to lead this team in scoring. So,
okay.
Yeah, that's probably my bold take for this big team. I don't even know if it's that bold, honestly. But.
Yeah, that's like Coach K drawing up a last shot for Cam Reddish type vibes.
Hey, he hit that one against Florida State.
He cashed it.
He hit that one against Florida State. They all went towards RJ.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. All right, so that's Duke. Extremely talented team. Should absolutely be considered one of the favorites, not only in the ACC, but definitely one of the top 10 teams in the country on paper.